Cyberlenium 2.0, Wicked Games, by Daniel Brian Mobley, read by Claire Glover. Whoever sheds human blood, by humans shall their blood be shed, for in the image of God has God made mankind. Genesis 9 verse 6. The face is the mirror of the mind, and eyes, without speaking, confess the secrets of the heart. Saint Jerome. Physical location, unknown. Time of day, unknown. Geographical location, Japan. Hypothetical date, January 10th, 2055. Wakey, wakey, Judas. Jason Korde opened his eyes, but had to close them again. A throbbing, searing pain traveled from the base of his neck to his skull, and back again. Undaunted, he tried once more. The throbbing continued. Only darkness at first, then blurry shapes. Figures. People in cages, like animals. Jason's weight shifted with his discovery. The rickety cage holding him, suspended in midair, swayed with his movements. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," an all-too-familiar voice warned him, the same voice that had jarred him awake. "There's quite an echo below us, unless you have a mat on to see where it ends." Jason checked for his sliver streak. Gone. He touched the back of his head. There was a raw, tender spot beneath his dreadlocks. It was wet. He looked at the blood on his fingertips, then spoke to the caged figure dangling a few feet in front of him. Though unable to see the figure's eyes, Jason recognized his voice. He answered him through gritted teeth. "It ends with me killing you, Frankie. Promise you that." Frankie Casper laughed, the shoulders of his silhouette shaking in the sparse light within the expanse. "Still think you're in charge, eh? Breaking news? You're not. We're trapped here, and money means ish to these people. Not even your Barbie droid can save you." As if on cue, the throbbing in Jason's head intensified. He leaned back, a queasiness rising in his belly. He looked at the other two cages, one on his left, the other on his right. Each cage held a single person. Neither person spoke nor moved. "Where is she anyway?" Frankie went on. "Do tell if they finished her off." Jason breathed in, trying to calm his nerves, said nothing. "Since we're all going to die anyway," Frankie whispered. "Just between us, did you smash that?" Jason pressed his face against the cage's rusty bars and closed his eyes. The cold metal felt good against his skin. He slurred his words as he held back the urge to vomit. "You asinine mother... You've killed us. Killed us both." The Ritz-Carlton, 1 Miramontes Point Road, 12:31 p.m., Half Moon Bay, California. January 3rd, 2055. Omega Droid Mark 7, version 1.3, Celestia, Celi, Neural Protocols. Neural sensitivity, 99%. Loading, 30 seconds remaining. Neural recall, 0%. In queue. Paused. Jason Korde barely got the hotel room door open before his android bodyguard was on him. Celestia, also known as Celi, reached up, grabbed him by the face, and kissed him hard. Jason picked her up by the waist, stumbling backward as she wrapped her arms around his neck, continuing to kiss him. He pulled his mouth away from hers, his head whipping left and right. "What are you?" Celi asked between pecks on his cheek. "Looking for a bed," Jason mumbled before her lips found his again. She paused, looking at him with half-closed eyes, smirked. "Romantic, but this body doesn't bruise." Jason let her go, Sally backed away from him, her clover-green eyes locked on his. She then drew close again and pushed him. He fell into the seat of a luxury recliner he had not even realized was there. The android sensually strutted a circle around the recliner before stopping in front of Jason. She then grabbed a fistful of her t-shirt, courtesy of Revenge Bodies and Robotics, USA, logo on the front, and ripped it open. Dropping the shirt's tattered remains, she stepped out of her heels and shimmied out of her jeans. There Sally stood, in bra and panties, and nothing else. Jason reclined, fully taking in her lithe form for the first time since the upgrades. Eli Powell had assured him that droid mechanic Eden Powell was the absolute best at what she did. Jason had to concur. No complaints. Sally crawled onto Jason's lap and straddled him. She yanked the blazer off his shoulders. He pulled his arms free of the jacket and brought her close, his head resting on her bosom. Her lips parted in response, and she placed her hands in his dreadlocks, neck craning. The two of them rocked back and forth for several seconds in this embrace. Jason cherished the feeling, not having felt such an intimate touch since... Ravena. And then, for only a nanosecond, Jason was 24 years old again and pressing his mouth hard against the lips of a skinny girl that faintly smelled of lemon soap, shampoo, and spring water. No, not today. Not now. Sally tore open Jason's dress shirt, the buttons scattering across the carpet. Her hands explored his chest as she kissed him. He cradled her as their tongues touched. Her hands moved downward, toward his belt buckle. And then he remembered Ravena squirming beneath his lust-laden weight. No, please, let me have this, just this once. The android undid his belt buckle. She made a sound as the belt came loose, a happy sound he had never heard her make. Her fingers undid the button on his pants. Jason gazed into Sally's eyes, but the unsure eyes of a 23-year-old Ravena stared back at him. Stop, Jason whispered, but Sally did no such thing. Stop, he repeated, then louder. Stop! And then Jason's bionic hand was at Sally's wrist, challenging her insistence with his resistance. And after that, Sally was on the floor. Both froze. Silence. After a few seconds, Jason spoke. Sally, Her brow furrowed as she hugged herself, confusion on her face. More silence. Jason tried fixing his clothes. I need to make a few calls, he said softly. Big meeting in the morning. You have clothes in the closet. The android stood to her feet. I won't, she began, then rephrased. Are we still going to Japan? Jason looked at her, but did not answer. Jason? Sally called. Get dressed, he said. Physical location, unknown. Time of day, unknown. Geographical location, Japan. Hypothetical date, January 10th, 2055. The cages holding Jason, Frankie, and the two other people were dropped. As they fell over a dozen feet, no one screamed. The four of them landed in shallow waters, the cages holding them breaking apart on impact. They all swam several feet toward a tunnel of light, the only beacon in an otherwise pitch-black environment. The strong odors of salt water, limestone, and something akin to cigar smoke tickled Jason's nose as he swam. The light grew larger, and the waters grew shallower until they made it out. Jason was the first. He kept his distance as Frankie and the two other strangers pulled themselves onto dry ground. They all attempted to dry off. A few feet ahead of them, the light they had swum toward was visible. It shone through the rectangular glass window of a closed tunnel door. Are we in hell? Frankie asked as he wrung out his undershirt. Jason eyed the two strangers. One, an older man with a salt and pepper beard, eyed him back warily. The other, a raven-haired girl, kept her eyes on Frankie. "We're not strangers," Jason told the older man. "Frankie and I heard you," the older man answered. "Up in the cages. You two don't like each other very much." "You and the girl know each other too, then?" Jason guessed. The man and the girl looked at one another, but said nothing. "Don't be afraid," Jason said, taking a step toward the girl. "Don't touch her!" the older man yelled. "Who in the blue hedgehog is that?" Frankie asked. They all looked over to see a hooded, cloaked figure standing before the tunnel door. The black-clad figure, wearing a no mask that resembled the androgynous face of an Omega droid, stood motionless. Jason noticed the symbols on the forehead of his mask: H, L, X, and O. They were the action buttons of the gaming remote known as the master trigger. The letters appeared to be written in blood. The figure spoke, in a lilted, digitized voice.
"Welcome to the 20th episode of Wicked Games. I am the orchestrator. You are the chosen ones, competing for the thrill of the play and dying for the privilege of entertaining the everlasting darknet."
The older man spoke up.
"You call kidnapping people being chosen?" "An honor, really,"
the orchestrator said.
"To be chosen is to be in a rare minority. It is to be blessed with exemplary skills within the human simulation."
"You're having a kratasm," Frankie quipped. "What's the game?" Jason asked. The orchestrator nodded.
"There are a total of 3 games to be played. Each may not be recognizable to all, but all may be recognizable to some. The lone survivor will receive their freedom, as well as what they desire most."
"Survivor?" the girl repeated.
"Yes,"
he affirmed.
"There can only be one victor in a single episode of Wicked Games, I'm afraid. 3 or 4 challenges must be eliminated to secure complete victory."
"And by eliminated, you mean—" Frankie trailed off. "Habeas corpus," Jason finished. "Huh?" the girl blatted. The older man answered. "Latin, girl. Means you should have the body." The foursome shared a chilling gaze as the orchestrator raised his fist in the air.
"May the greatest gamer gaming win!"
High Res Inc., 915 Wilshire Boulevard, 21st floor, 10:25 a.m., Los Angeles, California. January 4th, 2055. "The God Gun license is up for grabs again, people," Chairman Dave Marco said. "And our fearless leader, Jason Korde, has agreed to fly to Japan personally. He's going to meet with Omega Me and throw High-Res's hat in the ring." The entire boardroom of officers, managers, and developers erupted in applause as Jason reclined quietly. He made praying hands and bowed his head as Selly sat in silence next to him. "Let's keep our fingers crossed on this one," Marco continued. "And if all goes well—" "Excuse me, sir?" Everyone looked up to see the receptionist at the door. "My apologies, but there are a couple of visitors to see Mr. Korde." "Almost done," Marco said. The receptionist hurried over to Marco and began whispering. Jason read her lips and caught the phrase, "the FBI." He stood up at once. Selly followed suit. Jason addressed the room. "I apologize for cutting this short, but it seems that I've neglected another engagement. Marco will inform you of the remaining details we failed to cover here. Appreciate you all, and thanks for coming." As the boardroom began to empty, Jason beckoned to Marco and the receptionist. He spoke to Marco. "Compose an email and push it within the hour. We'll sync up after lunch." Marco nodded and left the room. Jason turned to the receptionist.
Send the visitors in, Miss Beckham. Thanks.
A couple of seconds later, Jason and Sally were alone. Jason tried to straighten his tie, but Sally took over. "Would you like me to leave as well?" she asked.
"No,"
he said.
"but I do want you to behave. Sense?"
"Sense," she answered. There was a firm knock on the boardroom door.
"Come,"
Jason called. 2 people entered the room, both wearing tailored black suits and both around 6 feet tall. The leader, a woman, was a brunette with unkempt hair. She extended her hand. Jason shook it. Sally glared. "Morning, Mr. Korde." The woman smiled. "I'm Agent Spilker with the FBI. This is Agent Hillbrook." Hillbrook was a black man, like Jason, but sported an induction buzz cut. He flashed his credentials, bypassing a handshake. Jason nodded, and Spilker went on. "We appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. We have some questions about your whereabouts on the night of January 2nd.
"What is this about, exactly?"
Jason asked. The agents exchanged looks. Hillbrook took over.
"There was an incident on Saturday night, not too far from here. The Mayan nightclub."
"Heard of it?" Jason said.
"What happened?" "News much, Mr. Korde. Military-grade drone shot up and fragged at something awful. Not to mention a fission bomb was detonated a few blocks away."
"At least 5 fatalities," Spilker added. "Dozens more with injuries and hundreds of thousands of dollars in property damage." Jason stepped over to one of the boardroom's large windows and surveyed the city skyline. Sally kept her eyes on Jason, but Spilker watched Sally. Jason spoke.
"Sounds like terrorists. Reprehensible. But what's that got to do with me or my company?"
Spilker held up 2 fingers. "2 things, maybe. First, 3 of those 5 fatalities were former gang members. Gino McKissack, his little brother Bobby, and Jacinda Schuster. All 3 were possible suspects regarding the break-in you reported the morning of January 1st. Sally adjusted her necktie, and Spilker went quiet. After a moment, Spilker continued. "Second, the drone. An eyewitness report states it was seen taking off from the roof of this very building around 11 p.m. on Saturday, roughly 6 minutes before all hell broke loose at the Mayan." Sally scowled. Jason turned his attention back to the agents.
"Hi-Res Inc. is one of 8 different businesses occupying the building, Agent Spilker."
"True," Spilker nodded. "But it's the only business with an owner whose alleged assailants wound up dead less than 48 hours after their crimes." Silence. Sally's hands balled into fists. Both Spilker and Hillbrook took note of this. So did Jason.
"Sit down, Sally,"
Jason commanded. Sally took a seat, placing her hands flat on the conference table. Jason closed the gap between the agents and himself. He looked them both in the eye and spoke flatly.
"Okay. I was at the Ritz, Half Moon Bay. Got the receipt to prove it. How's an office search sound?"
"Nothing that drastic yet, Mr. Korde." Spilker smiled. "But I appreciate the transparency."
"We'll be in touch,"
said Agent Hillbrook. Jason and Spilker shook hands again, and the 2 agents headed for the door. Sally scowled once more as they passed. As Hillbrook grabbed the door, Spilker stopped, turned around. "Oh, one last question, Mr. Korde. How long have you and the droid been smash-bashing?" Sally's hands clutched the table, but Jason only folded his arms and chuckled.
"Why?"
Jason taunted.
"You interested?"
Spilker laughed, shook her head, then walked out. Hillbrook slammed the door behind them. Physical location: tunnel entrance. Time of day: unknown. Geographical location: Japan. Hypothetical date: January 10th, 2055. The tunnel door unlocked, popping open with a heavy clicking sound. Jason spoke to the older man.
These games are designed to pit us against one another, but why take the bait? What's your fix?
The older man asked.
We make a pact to stick together. I'm sure we can advance without sacrificing each other.
Frankie laughed, smacking his forehead.
You eat that lore from old torture porn films, yeah? In real life, who says they're going to play fair anyway? We're probably already dead.
Jason focused on the older man again, ignoring Frankie's words.
Let's start with names. I'm Jason, and Mr. Rainbows and Unicorns here is Frankie.
The older man scratched his arm, hesitated, then answered.
Vince.
He gestured at the girl beside him.
This is Ravena. Ravena. Pretty name. Almost sounds like...
Jason broke eye contact, rubbed his chin.
I've heard rumors about these underground games for years. Were there any clues given as to how to win?
They mentioned the GGG, Ravena offered.
That's right,
Vince agreed.
I've never held the title, but I've been training her for it. Then there's only one of them present,
Frankie said. Jason stepped back. Ravena looked at Frankie, and then Jason. Her eyes grew wide. You are Jason Korde, she said. I knew you looked familiar.
But they scrubbed your victory,
Vince said.
Some ish about a lawsuit against Omegami, missing my point,
Frankie spat, cutting him off.
The Nutter said, may the greatest gamer gaming win. If Korde is the only one here...
Then it's all rigged, Ravena finished.
And they want you to be the winner,
Vince said, pointing his finger at Jason. Jason shook his head.
Or maybe it's just an expression. Believe me, if I wanted you all dead, I would have done it more efficiently. But haven't you promised to kill me, old friend?
Frankie reminded. Jason gave him a side-eyed glance, then headed for the door.
I'm working on it. You all believe what you want, but it's time we moved on.
After some hesitation, Vince, Ravena, and Frankie fell in line behind Jason and followed him through the tunnel door. Gulfstream G800, private jet, 2:57 a.m. Over the Pacific Ocean, en route to Tokyo, Japan, January 5th, 2055. Jason Korde could not sleep. He tossed and turned in the luxurious bed of his private jet, listening to the low, humming roar of its engines, the ambient noise of flight. The events of the last 6 days wore heavily on his mind. His goals had been simple enough. Acquire the technology to bring his dead lover back from the grave and exact revenge on the ones responsible for putting her there. Somewhere between his intent and his destination, life had interfered. Or kismet. Or karma. He could no longer decipher the difference. Innocent blood had been spilled. An old friend had become a new enemy. His android bodyguard had undergone a metamorphosis, and violence had ensued. Of course, this led to the spilling of even more blood, both innocent and not so innocent, and Jason knew the cycle was far from being over. How many would he be willing to exploit, kill, or allow to die to see his beloved Ravena again? He had no answers. Jason had only ever loved one other woman as fervently as he did Ravena, Trish McNamara. The two had met at a local arcade in Los Angeles during the summer of 2038. A beautiful, cunning gamer full of charm and resolve, Trish had managed to captivate the teenage outsider. Furthermore, she had been willing to mentor him on the road to competitive gaming. But their whirlwind romance would only teach him a sobering lesson. True greatness will always come at a price. And so too, true love. There was a sudden knock at Jason's private bedroom door. He did not move or turn on the lights.
Come,
he said. The door opened. Jason sat up to see Sally standing in the doorway. The ambient light from the aircraft cabin accentuated her silhouette.
"What is it?"
Jason asked. Sally stepped into the room, then stood at the foot of the bed. Jason's weight shifted.
"Sally."
"I must apologize," she began. "For Sunday. I disobeyed a direct order and—"
"Sally,"
Jason sighed.
"this technology is unexplored territory. I've been looking into what I can find, and your actions—"
He hesitated, but Sally waited for him to finish.
"The neural sensitivity interface,"
Jason went on.
"It can affect a droid system in strange ways, like the drug ecstasy affects human biology, especially during installation."
"So, you're not angry with me then?" Sally asked.
"No,"
Jason chuckled, smiling.
"Only angry with myself."
Sally's lips curved upward. There was a moment of silence, and then she asked, "May I sleep with you now?"
"Sally,"
Jason began, then cleared his throat.
"That's not why—"
"I know why," she went on. "It is because I am not Ravena, but I also know you enjoyed the feeling of our closeness, and I want you to know I did too." Jason only stared at her, remained quiet. "May I lie beside you then?" Sally rephrased. "If only for tonight." After some hesitation, he gave her an ever so slight nod.
"Close the door,"
he told her. The android did as she was told. Afterward, she stripped down to her undergarments and crawled into bed with him. Jason covered them both with a blanket and became the big spoon to her little spoon. And there they lay, man and machine, owner and the owned. A provisional comfort for the body, but a permanent bane for the spirit. Physical location, Playroom 1. Time of day, unknown. Geographical location, Japan. Hypothetical date, January 10th, 2055. The 4 challengers stood before a wide, bottomless chasm, a total of 16 small platforms floating in a grid pattern across it. There were 4 platforms in each of the 4 rows, and a span of 4 feet between each platform. In each row, from left to right, a platform was marked with a corresponding letter taken from the buttons of the master trigger: H, L, X, and O. On the other side of the chasm stood an escape door leading to the next room. A digital play clock hung over the door. It read 1 minute, 20 seconds. A large marble statue of a mechanized guardian angel stood near the exit, an X carved on its forehead. A message spray-painted in yellow was on the wall beside it. The foursome stared at the message. Ravena finally read it aloud. "I am a cloud, dark and vast, bringing rain before I'm past. What am I?" The play clock suddenly activated, the timer ticking down by the second. 1 platform in each row began to roll, flipping to its underside. From left to right, each platform followed a ripple effect. One after another, the platforms rolled, stabilized, and rolled again. There were barely 3 seconds between each roll.
"Started the countdown, you silly prat!"
Frankie yelled.
"Shut your trap!"
Vince yelled back. Jason eyed the timer.
1 minute, 5 seconds left. "Can we all agree this is a puzzle platformer?"
Jason called.
"A la Jumpman?"
Yes!
Vince, Ravena, and Frankie all agreed.
"Then there's a way to steady the platform to get across,"
Jason finished.
"The riddle,"
Vince said.
"What's the answer?" "Who bloody knows?"
Frankie yelled. Jason eyed the timer.
50 seconds left.
He looked at Ravena. Her lips were moving silently.
"What's top, kid?"
he asked. "Clouds," the girl mumbled. Rain, maybe types of clouds? Like stratus clouds or
Nimbus,
Vince finished.
explains the statue.
Jason agreed.
But that doesn't help steady the...
Frankie began backing away from the chasm.
We don't have time for this, Jay,
he groaned. Jason looked at the clock. 39 seconds left. And just as he realized Frankie was getting a running start, Frankie had already sprinted past him.
Frankie, no!
Jason yelled. Frankie jumped and landed on the H platform in row 1. The platform began to glow. As he prepared to make the jump to row 2, Jason called out,
Stop!
Frankie froze, and they all noticed that the other platforms continued to roll in sequence around him, while his platform remained steady.
Don't move!
Jason yelled.
Time's a-tickin',
Vince said.
Hurry!
Ravena screamed.
22 seconds.
Jason looked at the X carved in the forehead of the mech angel.
Nimbus, platform H, buttons L, X, and O, letters. O could be 0, but X shows up twice. X could also symbolize an unknown quantity or variable. A nimbus or... Halo!
Jason yelled aloud.
X represents A. The answer? Halo! 11 seconds.
Jason looked to Ravena, but she was already sprinting. She timed her 2 jumps with a patterned sequence, landing safely on the X platform in row 2. A second glow. Vince made the sequence of triple jumps a couple of seconds later, landing on the L platform of row 3. Another glow. Now, it was Jason's turn.
4 jumps to the O platform. 5 seconds left. If this doesn't work, we're all dead.
Time slowed to a crawl as Jason made his jumps. He could hear the voices of his fellow challengers cheering him on as the clock ticked down. But all he could see was the face of the only one who mattered. She was the energy in his moment of truth. Godgun. A virtual reality, first-person shooter video game created and developed by Omegami International and released globally on September 11th, 2042. The game utilizes pseudo-4D technological animations, and later holograms, to simulate real-life combat situations. The in-game narrative follows Cadmiel, a wingless angel who cannot return to heaven until he kills 666 demons wandering the earth. He must accomplish his mission with a titular Godgun, a celestial firearm forged in the wrath of God. The game was both a critical and commercial success, spawning 2 sequels and a plethora of merchandise, including a toy line, anime series, and live-action film. The Ritz-Carlton, 971 Akasaka Minato-ku, 10:55 p.m., Tokyo, Japan. January 8th, 2055. Jason and Sally waited on the sidewalk in front of the hotel for the taxi. They were both dressed in business attire, Jason in a navy blue suit and Sally in a matching pantsuit. Sally carried a small grey backpack. As the busy city pulsed around them, passers-by stared. The unwanted, but expected, attention made Jason glad he had entered the country on a business disguise. They had taken precautions, including running errands like a formal meeting with Omegami representatives about a potential partnership, Sakurai Japanese tea experience in Tokyo, visiting the Meiji Shrine, Shibuya, and a long shopping spree in the Electric Town, Akihabara. 2.5 days of creating a cover story for his visit to the Far East had tested Jason's patience. Ravena had already taken him to those places years ago. Furthermore, he was on the clock. But it all paid off. His contact, a private investigator named Benji Goro, finally called him with information on Frankie Casper's possible whereabouts, Toshima City. The lead had taken time, as Goro had used extreme measures to trace it. Jason had not been able to get a good night's sleep since the holographic manifestation nanodrive, Ravena's virtual face, was stolen, and Goro reported that Frankie was searching for someone who could recalibrate it. His goal? to give his daughter Zen a new face at Jason's expense. The taxi pulled up, and Jason and his android companion got in. "Ikebukuro made suretete kudasai," Jason said. "Sumimasen." The driver pulled off. As the taxi drove along, Jason gazed out the window at the vibrant, real-time montage of Tokyo nightlife. "How do we know if Casper still has the interface?" Sally asked. "We don't," Jason confided. "But I pray he hasn't done anything stupid with it." "Pray?" Sally drawled. "Does God concern himself with preventing stupidity?" "For Frankie's sake, I pray he does." 10 minutes later, the taxi pulled onto a side road near the Imperial Palace in Chiyoda City. Jason and Sally shared a look of confusion. Jason leaned forward, speaking to the taxi driver. "Nani shiteru no?" Jason asked. "Kore wa shigaimasu."
"Honto ni moshiwakenai,"
the driver whispered. With a push of a button, the driver locked the rear doors, and a noxious gas began filling the taxi. He then exited the car, locking the front doors as well. "Hikakaru!" Sally gasped. "Kirumoro!" Jason commanded. Jason thrust his elbow against the reinforced glass window, but it would not break. The oxygen within the vehicle was gone in seconds, and he held his breath. Immune, Sally removed her small, grey backpack and opened it. A large black sedan pulled up about 10 feet behind the taxi, and a group of 6 masked men stepped out. 4 of them were empty-handed, but 2 carried Draco pistols. One of the men spoke to the taxi driver, who was still standing near his vehicle.
"Ikutsuka? Futari,"
the driver replied.
"Kokoshin dansei, hakushin josei, kapuru. Okane wa doko?"
The right side rear door of the taxi burst off its hinges and skidded across the concrete. All 7 men froze. And then the android Sally came striding around the vehicle, firing a fully assembled AR-15 with deadly precision. The suppressor muffled the sharp cracking sounds as rounds struck the skulls of 2 attackers, killing them instantly.
"Kira roboto!"
The driver screamed. He tried to escape into the nearby park, but the android pivoted her aim, firing a round into his kneecap. He fell, screaming in agony. 2 of the assailants took cover, while the armed ones returned fire. The droid stood in the open against the hail of bullets, exchanging shots to draw fire away from the taxi, away from her owner. Jason crawled out of the damaged side of the car. Falling to the ground, he gasped for air as the 2 unarmed masked men approached the taxi and grabbed him. As they dragged him back to their sedan, Sally shot and killed one of the gunmen. But when she saw Jason being taken away, emotion overrode her programming.
"Jason!"
she screamed.
"Jason!"
Struggling to breathe, Jason saw his bodyguard take several bullets, and she let out a distorted, digitized wail as she tumbled to the pavement.
"Sally?"
Thrown into the sedan, Jason felt a dull slap on the back of his head. And then, nothing. Physical location, Playroom 2. Time of day, unknown. Geographical location, Japan. Hypothetical date, January 10th, 2055. Jason clawed through the left cross without thinking. The bionic punch split Frankie's lip on impact, and the fair-skinned gamer stumbled through the doorway into Playroom 2. Jason flexed his fingers after the punch, while Frankie regained his balance. Vince and Ravena came into the room behind them.
"Are you Lulu?"
Frankie cried.
"Deserved it,"
Vince said.
"Almost got us all killed."
Frankie pointed at Jason, his lips swelling.
"No, he would have done that. If I hadn't jumped, the timer would have reached 0 and—"
Jason clenched his fist again, but Frankie backed away, continuing to accuse.
"Neither of you know what he's capable of. My daughter is in a hospital, butchered because of him. I begged you,"
Jason yelled.
"but you didn't listen, and now the kid's paying for it."
Vince stood between the 2 men and glared at Jason.
"Wait a minute.
You hurt a kid? She was playing a game she should have never been allowed to play, Jason said. I'm going home with that drive, Jason, Frankie hissed as he rubbed blood from his lip. I'm going to make things right for Zen. I promise.
Shush,
whispered Ravena.
Did you hear that? Sounded like...
Everyone went silent. Nothing. Don't hear anything, Frankie finally said. The foursome took in their surroundings. The room resembled a worn-down living room of a vintage 20th century home. The furniture was covered with dusty grey tarps. The floorboards and walls were old, and the 4 windows were all boarded up with wooden planks. On the floor beneath one of the windows sat a large metal chest. Jason eyed the front door on the far side of the room. Scrawled in red across the door were the words, "Do not exit." Another digital play clock hung above the door. It was set for 4 minutes. There's an attic hatch over here, Vince mumbled as he gazed at the ceiling in the opposite corner of the room. But it says, "Do not exit," Jason finished. A voice echoed throughout the room, startling the 4 challengers. It was the voice of the orchestrator.
The second game will begin in 90 seconds. Playtime will consist of 3 rounds. Please proceed to the metal crate and retrieve your headset visors and light guns.
They all approached the metal crate. Ravena opened it. Inside, 4 visors and 4 guns were laid out before them. On the inside of the crate's lid was another scrawled message.
What is a ruin but time easing itself of endurance?
Ravena read aloud. Juna Barnes, Jason answered. A pioneer of modernist literature. Means time is greater than endurance. Pfft, how would you know? Frankie scoffed. Read her a decade ago, Jason continued. Among other writings, I was wrestling with a friend's choice to transform themselves. Frankie and Ravena reached into the crate and grabbed their visors and guns. "And your conclusion?" Vince asked as he grabbed his equipment. Jason looked him in the eye as he armed himself. That Tupac was right. Only God can judge.
What's a Tupac?
Ravena asked. A buzzer sounded, and the digital play clock began ticking down. The overhead lights went out, plunging the room into pitch-black darkness. Jason spoke as he quickly put on his visor and readied his gun. These visors have night vision. Everyone familiar with the God Gun series? The foursome organized themselves in a defensive back-to-back formation, ensuring nothing could sneak up on them. The original, Vince said. Been training with a girl on the second.
Then playing the third behind the old man's back,
Ravena snickered. I hate this bloody game, Frankie groaned. Jason laughed. That's because Ravena and I used to cook your ashes in versus mode. Inhuman cries began echoing throughout the room. A scaly, crimson-skinned fist punched through one of the glass windows, the wooden plank splintering on impact. More scaly hands smashed through the other 3 windows as well.
They're coming!
Ravena yelled.
Demons!
Don't break the formation! Jason warned. The foursome began shooting their light guns, muzzles flashing as the hulking demons squeezed themselves through the broken barriers and into the tiny room. The creature's skin caught fire as the guns found their marks. The demons let out agonized groans as they took damage and became flaming, walking effigies. Jason's gun made a clicking sound, indicating it was empty of virtual bullets. He waved his arm in a reload motion, slapping his palm on the bottom of the grip. The sound effect of a magazine being loaded into a gun echoed, and he was able to shoot again. This happened to each challenger, and they all reloaded as Jason had done, continuing to shoot at will. The demons toppled over themselves and burst into flames as they were shot. The buzzer sounded again, and Jason looked at the digital clock. It stopped at 2 minutes 40 seconds. The orchestrator's voice boomed.
End of round 1. Round 2 will commence in 30 seconds.
No more God Gun 3 for you, girl, Vince teased Ravena.
You know you love it when I outpace you, old man.
She grinned. Jason and Frankie shared a look. Frankie side-eyed Ravena.
He is your old man, right?
Is he?
The girl mocked.
None ya, gloomer.
Stay focused, Jason interrupted. Round 2's coming, and it could get super dicey. Vince glanced at the clock above the door. Clock stopped at 2 minutes 40 seconds. What does that mean? Means it's not over, Jason answered, scanning the room.
Means we're unstoppable together,
breathed Ravena.
right?
The buzzer sounded again, signaling the beginning of the second round. The monstrous cries resumed, and the demons returned. They began crawling into the windows again, but this time there were twice as many as before. The 4 challengers raised their light guns and fired, reloaded, and fired again, and again. But as each demon fell, 2 more entered through the broken windows, taking their place. Gradually, the foursome was pushed back into a corner, the demon horde advancing on them by the second. You feel those shocks? Yelled Frankie. Follow me, Jason called. Shoulder-to-shoulder formation! As the foursome fired their light guns into the demon horde surrounding them, Jason began shuffling his feet. The other 3 challengers followed suit, shuffling their feet as well, moving in unison along the walls of the room to the area farthest from where the demons were coming in. The droning yowls of the creatures pierced Jason's ears as they clawed at his face and chest. The horde was nearly on top of them when the buzzer sounded, ending the second round. The room's lights returned, blinding the challengers. They removed their headset visors.
You have survived round 2,
said the orchestrator.
Commendable. Please prepare for the third and final round of this game. Beneath the cushions of the top-covered furniture, you will find your weapons. Please discard your visors and light guns, as they will be useless from this moment onward. You have 99 seconds.
Jason dropped his equipment and rubbed the sweat from his forehead. Everyone apples? Shooters are medio, said Frankie. Vince brushed the hair out of Luvena's face, then rubbed the sweat from her forehead with his palm. Ravena flushed bright pink. We're good, Vince said, his eyes on Ravena. Jason went to the couch. Check the cushions, the recliner, love seat, everything. Quickly. The foursome snatched the tarps off the movable furniture, upending the cushions on each piece. They all discovered weapons.
Holy broly! A switchblade?
Marveled Ravena.
38 special revolver,
Vince said.
A samurai sword?
Questioned Frankie. Katana, Jason corrected. And I found the submachine gun and 9mm Beretta.
So, 3 guns, a knife, and a sword,
Vince mused.
Whatever's coming, it's not going to be virtual, is it?
Anybody want to trade? Jason asked.
Sure,
Frankie said.
Anybody but him,
Jason rephrased as he checked the magazines of his guns. Vince popped the revolver cylinder out. 6 bullets. He spun the cylinder, smacked it back in place, and turned to Ravena.
Stay behind me, girl.
Jason glanced at the play clock. It read 1 minute 20 seconds.
Only 2 minutes left. Stay caramel. Use bullets wisely.
Jason noticed Frankie holding the katana awkwardly, a frown on his sweat-covered face. Despite all that had transpired between them, Jason felt something stir inside him, an old instinct that he was too weary to resist.
Frankie,
Jason said.
Catch.
He tossed the handgun. Frankie caught it. Frankie then tossed the katana back to Jason. He caught it by the handle and took a practice slash. Long sword in one hand, a machine gun in the other, Jason spoke to the group as they focused on the open windows.
We're going to win this.
Survive, Jason. Ravena is counting on you. The buzzer sounded, and the first wave of 6 dozen tribal cannibals began climbing in through the windows. Angry, persistent, starving. 1 hour and 20 seconds later, the game was over. Triggered. also referred to by the Game Ahead community as the Buttons game, is an all-ages, match-3 puzzle game created and developed by Hi-Rez Inc. Initially released for the OHM Player Speed console on June 23, 2051, it served as the first non-collaborative title for the independent company. The concept was originally developed in 2050 by Hi-Rez founder Jason Korde. Shortly after programming a prototype on PC, Korde sought help from software engineer and colleague David Marco, a former employee of Omegami, who created a refined version of the game. The game went on to become a commercial success, selling 13.5 million units in the United States and becoming Japan's 5th highest-selling game of the year. Its popularity spawned several ports, including an Arcadina version, and established Hi-Rez Inc. as a rising star within the industry. Physical location: Tunnel to Playroom 3. Time of day: unknown. Geographical location: Japan. Hypothetical date: January 10th, 2055. The sounds made his skin crawl. Sounds of gunfire, growls, snarls, screams, and, yes, the wet tearing of flesh replayed themselves in his mind as he staggered through the tunnel to Playroom 3. Wounded and exhausted, his body ached as he walked. His undershirt, no longer white but dark crimson, dripped with the blood of countless bodies, both enemies and allies. The girl's screams suddenly boomed in his skull again, so loud and clear that he flinched, convinced she was standing next to him. Jason Korde stopped walking and turned his head, his bloodshot eyes searching for Ravena, even as her voice dissolved into the ether.
Darkness there, and nothing more.
An auditory hallucination.
"Move it!"
Frankie whispered, jamming the barrel of the Beretta handgun into the small of Jason's back.
"California's calling my name."
Jason refocused and continued walking, the tunnel door that would lead them to the playroom in sight. He mumbled his words.
"You finessed them. Might as well have eaten them yourself."
Frankie tried to wipe blood from his jaw, but only succeeded in smearing it onto his chin.
"Bloody savages,"
Frankie mused.
"But no different than what you did to my Z-baby. There's no room for high horses. We both did what we had to. Only difference is, I did it to survive. But you? You did it to win."
Jason stopped at the tunnel door, looked over his shoulder at Frankie.
"In the world we live in, the world we live for, is there a difference?"
The tunnel door unlocked, its loud clink echoing backward into a place laced with sins and tragedies.
"Let's find out,"
Frankie whispered.
"Together."
Grabbing Jason by the back of his neck, Frankie forced him through the open door. The two men were blinded by fluorescent light as they entered the large room. Once their eyes adjusted, they looked up to see the orchestrator. The mysterious figure was sitting on a platinum throne, legs crossed, on the far side of the room. Two Omega droids, lacking both clothes and skin avatars, stood guard on his flank. Each droid was armed with a fully automatic AK-47, equipped with a laser sight. The white room was pristine, with neon-walled paneling, a tiled floor, and cameras fixed in its four corners. Lined on the walls were platinum-framed photographs of people, 19 in all. The ages, genders, and ethnicities of the group were varied. Jason's eyes darted over each face. He did not recognize any of them, save one, the 6th one in the sequence. It was the face of Trish McNamara, his first love. The orchestrator raised a gloved hand.
"Welcome to the final game, gentlemen. Please place your firearm on the floor, Mr. Casper."
When Frankie hesitated, the Omega droids raised their weapons. Frankie instinctively stooped behind Jason, using him as a human shield. The red dots from the laser sights appeared on Jason's chest and face, but he did not move. The orchestrator lowered his hand and leaned back.
It'd be a shame for both you and Mr. Korde to die.
He scolded.
So very close to victory, Mr. Casper. Our viewers would be most unhappy with such an outcome. And your precious daughter, most of all. So anticlimactic. A bit like edging without the payoff. Too much of a tease for my tastes. And besides, I still have what you want.
Might as well, Frankie breathed. Bloody thing's empty anyway. Slowly, Frankie knelt and placed the gun on the floor. As he stood up, Jason spun around and took a swing at his head. Frankie ducked the punch and kicked Jason in the knee. The force of the blow knocked both men to the floor. They both sprang back to their feet immediately.
Enough,
said the orchestrator.
Our viewers are as passionate about seeing the bloodletting as you two are about giving it. But as per the rules, the carnage will only commence within proper parameters.
He revealed a tiny black remote, pushed one of its buttons. The floor in the center of the room shifted. Out of the removable panel in the floor rose a setup with a metallic table and 4 loading chairs. The chairs all sat circularly facing each other, each with a headset visor and master trigger lying on the table in front of it. The 2 challengers eyed the Rube Goldberg-like gauntlets fastened on the chair's armrests. The gauntlets sported sharp, miniature circular saws, hemostatic syringes, and hypodermic needles. The contraptions were both foreign and familiar to them.
The final game will be triggered,
said the orchestrator.
Game is an arms rules. Finger amputations will occur on a single-round basis. The first challenger to lose all fingers on their non-dominant hand will be eliminated.
Jason and Frankie approached the table and sat down, facing one another. As the Omega droid strapped them in, the challengers locked eyes.
Time to keep your promise, Jay,
Frankie said.
Best believe I'm keeping mine.
You're doing this for Zen. I'm doing this for Ravena, said Jason.
Ravena? Are you daft? Ravena's apples.
Ravena's dead, Frankie. And soon, you will be too. The Omega droids put the master triggers into the challenger's dominant hands. Jason looked at the orchestrator.
My left,
he began, but the orchestrator cut him off.
The trigger meets your specifications, Mr. Korde. Every challenger gets a fair go here, even crippies like yourself. Now, let the final game begin.
The headset visors were placed on the challengers. There was a surge of power, the real world melting away. Went black. And then, the hologram of the button board manifested, a construct in cyberspace. The orchestrator held up a US quarter.
Coin toss,
the orchestrator said.
Call.
Tails,
Frankie said. The orchestrator flipped the coin. Into the air it went, then landed in his gloved palm. He slapped it onto the top of his other hand. Called it.
Casper wins. Mr. Korde will guess first.
Frankie manipulated his master trigger, and a 3-button sequence appeared on the board. The 3rd button in the sequence was blank, its identity hidden. Jason studied the sequence for several seconds.
X, O, and blank.
X, Jason answered aloud as he inputted on his master trigger. The blank button lit up, revealing itself to be an X. The color drained from Frankie's face.
Korde wins,
said the orchestrator.
Say goodbye to the little piggy, Mr. Casper.
No!
Frankie screamed. The gauntlet on his left hand activated. One of the tiny saws spun to life, sawing through flesh, tendon, and bone. Frankie's pinky finger fell off and onto the white floor, blood dribbling along with it. The gauntlet completed the amputation by injecting an anesthetic into his ulnar nerve and releasing a hemostatic agent, polymer peptide interfusion, into his open wound.
Mr. Korde?
The orchestrator called. Jason input a new sequence on his master trigger. The button sequence appeared on the holographic board. It read blank, H and L. Frankie tried to slow his breathing as he concentrated. After a few moments, he spoke.
Bloody answer is O,
He breathed.
Do one, Jason.
The blank button was revealed as O.
Casper wins.
Whispered the orchestrator.
Afraid this little piggy shan't be going home, Mr. Korde.
Jason took a deep breath, gritted his teeth, and grounded his tame, as Ravena had taught him. He mentally went on a hiatus as his hand was dissected. As the saw did its gruesome work, he bit down on his bottom lip, blood oozing from the finger amputation. A double shot of needles. Round 3, fresh pain. Round 4, more pain. Frankie had found a rhythm of his own. Round 5, then 6. The rounds, turns, guesses, and injuries blurred together. But through it all, Jason refused to scream in the presence of his enemies, denying them a show of weakness and daring to spit in the face of fate itself. Saw, bleed, inject, repeat. The cycle continued, neither challenger submitting. Round 7. Jason guessed the L button, and with that, Frankie lost the pointer finger on his left hand. Round 8. Jason fought blurred vision as he viewed the board. Input his button sequence. It read X, H, blank. Frankie studied the board for over a minute, his head swaying from side to side.
H,
he finally slurred. Jason never heard the orchestrator's voice. All he heard was the sound of the circular saw as it sawed through his pointer finger, leaving his thumb the lone digit on his right hand. He drooled a mixture of blood, bile, and saliva from his mouth, holding on to what mattered most to him.
for Ravena,
He groaned.
for Zen.
Frankie groaned back. As their bloody fingers lay strewn on the floor, a metallic sweetness pervaded the air. Both challengers trembled, fighting the urge to pass out. The orchestrator applauded.
Bravo, gentlemen! You have fought a wicked fight and nearly finished a virulent course, truly making the 20th episode of Wicked Games special for our viewers. The projected metrics, breathtaking. Are you ready for the final?
The explosion shook the very foundation of the building, a seismic rumble that rattled Jason's teeth. Emergency lights activated, and the room was bathed in a flickering, neon-red glow. A high-pitched, chattering buzz followed.
Security breach.
Although their visors only allowed them to see the virtual game, Jason and Frankie turned their heads toward the room's right side wall. Muffled gunfire and screams could be heard coming from the other side. The orchestrator sprang up and pointed.
Droids, kill mode! Full alert!
The Omega droids readied their weapons and moved toward the wall. Jason shook off his headset visor. Frankie did the same. As the droids advanced, the wall began to crumble. Suddenly, a barrage of bullets pierced through limestone, tiled panels, and neon bulbs, spitting chunks of rock, glass, and debris into the room. The wall then collapsed. As smoke and dust rose in the air, the Omega droid nicknamed Selly lumbered through the opening, holding a rotary cannon, M134 minigun, nearly twice her size. Swathed in tactical artillery, including grenades, ammunition belts, a Draco, and a katana. Her camisole and Japanese leather zipper pants were stained with both human and droid blood. Her battle-ravaged skin, marked with circuit mesh sutures, told the tale of war and upgrade. She glared at her artificial contemporaries.
Kofuku suru gashinukada!
She threatened in Japanese. The Omega droids opened fire. Selly moved at blurring speed, dodging bullets as she strafed deeper into the room. Swinging her minigun in their direction, she pressed the trigger. The rotary cannon screamed to life, spinning into action. Selly growled as she painted our adversaries with rapid-fire tracer rounds, creating arcs of orange light on her targets. Within seconds, the droids were no more, their standard-grade alloy husks shredded by 1,500 rounds of burning, lead-encased steel. Overheated, the minigun jammed. It thudded to the floor as Selly dropped it. Jason dropped his master trigger.
Sully.
He sighed. The orchestrator stared, transfixed by Selly. The android discarded the ammunition belts for the minigun and approached Jason. Upon discovering the gruesome scene, she turned her attention to the hooded one, her face contorted with rage.
What have you done to him?
Selly yelled.
Rip his bloody hooded head off!
Frankie growled.
Shut up, Frankie!
Jason slurred.
Selly!
When the orchestrator began to move, Selly drew her Draco on him.
Move and you die!
The orchestrator stopped moving. Not taking her eyes off the enemy, Selly released Jason from the bonds of his loading chair. He stood up and limped over to his still-bound challenger. Frankie glared up at him.
Barbie droid to the rescue,
Frankie said, incredulity in his tone.
Karma always chooses you.
Jason showed him his mutilated hand and smirked with bitterness.
If this is what being chosen looks like, then I guess Karma wants us to be twins. We'll never be twins,
Frankie mumbled, spitting blood on the floor.
True, but for better or worse, we'll always be brothers.
The two men locked eyes.
We can't replay this game,
Jason continued.
but maybe we can finish it on the same side.
Frankie looked at the floor, then lifted his head.
If you cut me loose, I can't promise it's over. And if I free you, I can't promise it's not,
said Jason. Jason freed Frankie from the chair. As he stood up, the orchestrator spoke.
The game is far from over, gentlemen. I still have what you want.
He showed them the black remote and pressed a button. A mechanical arm emerged from the ceiling, holding two small metal lockboxes, each with a translucent window. The arm placed the boxes onto the metal table before them, then returned to the ceiling. There were tiny black screens visible on each box. Jason eyed one of the boxes. Inside was the nanodrive interface, Ravena's holographic visage. Jason noticed Frankie eyeing it as well. With her gun still trained on the orchestrator, Selly spoke. "What's in the second box?" The hooded figure said nothing.
"Plane tickets to Iceland,"
Jason answered, taking a closer look.
"For Vince and Ravena. They were in love?"
scoffed Frankie.
"So the old-timer was a rock spider after all."
A May-December romance, if you will.
The orchestrator mused.
Their families despise their union. Perhaps in their next life, they will find the happy ending that so tragically eluded them in this one.
Jason glared at him.
"Worry about your own life. Selly."
Selly closed the distance, grabbing the orchestrator by the throat. She forced him over to the table. Jason pointed at the box.
"Open it,"
he commanded.
Only you can do that,
the orchestrator said hoarsely.
You or Mr. Casper.
Selly pressed the barrel of her Draco to the hooded one's temple, but Jason shook his head.
"We could just shoot it open,"
Frankie offered.
"Might damage the interface,"
said Jason.
"I'm sure it's hitched."
Selly squeezed the orchestrator's shoulder. There was an audible pop as the arm bone came out of the shoulder socket. His digitized voice became distorted as he screamed. Gasping, he spoke hysterically.
No trap! Only the rules of the game. The contents of the box will burn if tampered with. True, but the box will unlock if it detects only the heartbeat of one survivor.
Jason and Frankie looked at each other.
"We've both sacrificed a lot for this,"
Jason began.
"But I should have never let you think I didn't care about you, or the kid. I do, Frankie. You help me get this drive, and I'll help Zen in any way I can." "No shying?"
Frankie asked.
"A new face for Zen? Arm?" You have my word. Too bad we can't shake on it. And what of those bollocks about Ravena? I'm capless, Frankie.
Frankie searched Jason's face before smirking.
I'll need some proof to eat that one.
The orchestrator pushed another button on his remote. A 30-second countdown appeared on the tiny black screens of the lockboxes.
30 seconds to open the box, or it all burns,
the hooded one warned.
Cameras are still filming, and we always deliver. Ugh!
Selly roundhouse kicked the orchestrator in the face, knocking him to the floor. The remote went flying. Jason grabbed the drive's lockbox and desperately searched for a way to open it.
20 seconds.
Frankie turned to Jason.
Shoot it open! It's the only way! No!
Jason yelled.
It'll burn if you don't! 14 seconds.
Jason set the box down and pulled the handgun from Selly's hip holster. It was an Ambu M60 revolver, police issue. He eyed the box and aimed.
11 seconds. Shoot it!
Frankie yelled.
What are you waiting for?
Jason, Selly questioned. Jason clenched his teeth.
I told you, Frankie. If you help me, I'd help Zen. I'm trying, Jay,
Frankie said.
Just take the shot. And I gave you my word,
Jason continued.
6 seconds. Yes, shoot, damn you,
Frankie cried.
We're out of time.
Jason turned the gun on Frankie with misty eyes, his lip quivering.
We are. And you have my word, brother.
Franklin Edwin Casper tried to say something, but Jason Korde pulled the trigger. The revolver kicked in his bionic hand, and the bullet entered Casper's skull right above his left eye. His head bobbed backward. His body fell forward. He landed face down in a heap. His left arm splayed outward and twisted. To Jason, it looked as if Frankie were giving him a thumbs up. He welcomed the lie. Why not? The rest of the fingers on that hand were gone. A thumbs up was literally all there was left to give. The timer on the translucent lockboxes stopped at 1 second, beeped, then unlocked. Jason set the revolver on the table and opened the box, taking the nano drive. He also opened the other box and took the plane tickets for a couple who no longer needed them. He put them all in his front pants pocket. Jason stared down at Frankie's prostrated corpse as blood pooled around it. His eyes then went to the severed fingers they had both sacrificed for the drive. For Ravena, for Zen. His shoulders sagged.
There was no other option,
Selly told him.
If he had never involved himself, Casper would still be alive.
The android's words brought him little comfort. Jason picked up the revolver again and waved it at the orchestrator. His tone was matter-of-fact.
I'm going to kill you. But before I do, you're going to answer one question.
The hooded one was on his knees, trying to fix his dislocated shoulder. He finally popped it back into place. He let out a low, digitized groan, then eyed the gun in his face.
Shoot,
he grunted.
The question, that is.
Jason nodded at the wall of photographs.
The 6th survivor, the red-haired woman, where is she?
The orchestrator angled his head, said nothing.
I won't ask again,
Jason warned. He finally looked at Jason squarely.
Is she not standing by your side?
Selly looked at Jason, then at the photograph on the wall. Her eyes widened, and her voice became unsure.
Jason?
Jason did not take his eyes off the orchestrator.
Lose the hood.
The orchestrator hesitated, then pushed the hood back, revealing a long, fading ginger mane of hair.
The mask,
Jason ordered.
Now!
The orchestrator pinched the droid-faced no-mask by its edges and removed it. Not a man, but a woman glared back at Jason with striking, clover-green eyes. He said her name with a sigh.
Trish.
This woman has my face,
Sally whispered.
older, but my face.
Trish McNamara made a chortling sound. She shook her head and spat blood, a result of Sally's kick, on the floor. It spattered onto the android's boots.
Wrong, bimbot. You have mine. Honestly, Jace, when your sex droid made the Schwarzenegger entrance, even I couldn't resist being flattered.
Sally cocked her head. Without the voice changer of the no mask, McNamara's voice was identical to that of the androids, even down to the lilt.
What happened to you?
Jason asked McNamara.
You sent me away.
Or don't you remember?
You sent yourself away,
Jason corrected.
You were a criminal, a liar, manipulator, and killer, a
psychopath.
And now so are you. A murderer's murderer. How does it feel?
I didn't kill that girl or her old man. Frankie didn't need to die. You did this.
McNamara chortled again.
Denial's so thick, half the North Atlantic couldn't wash it away.
It saddens me to know that, after all these years, you still cannot come to terms with who you are.
Jason pressed the barrel of the revolver against McNamara's forehead. Sally looked at Jason's mangled right hand, which was beginning to bleed more copiously. Her eyes went to Jason's face.
You're badly injured. We must—
We're not the same,
Jason declared, ignoring his bodyguard.
Aren't we, lover?
McNamara asked.
Remember those summer nights, lying in the back of that old 25 Tesla between tournaments? Exploring the world in that car without it moving an inch.
Us pitying our God-fearing fathers as we counted our loot and
buried our secrets inside each other.
Jason grinned without joy.
You were 27. I was 16. You groomed me. And I believed you loved me. Truth is, you needed me. I was your cash cow.
McNamara leered past the gun's barrel and into Jason's eyes. She licked a trace of blood from her lips.
Still are, Jace. Congratulations. 'Tis why I picked you.
Greatest episode ever. Do you have any idea the numbers? Goro betrayed you,
Sally told Jason.
For the money. But I repaid him.
Jason lowered the gun, and McNamara rose to her feet. Sally's lips pressed into a thin line. Trish McNamara drew close to Jason, touched his face.
So, we're even now?
Jason asked.
I cannot lie,
she said.
Prison was awful, yes. Beaten, used, trafficked. But everything I endured brought me here, to the games. First, I competed for my life and survived. Then, our patrons offered me the position of innovator. And eventually, the orchestrator.
Sally watched as more blood dribbled from Jason's hand, staining the floor. Jason tried to look away, but McNamara cupped his face, smiled.
Pain is power, Jace. A gift. Through it, we find our calling and truest selves. Twice a crippy. You're no stranger, yes?
But you haven't lived until you've inflicted pain in its rawest, purest.
She recoiled as Jason pulled away, cutting her short.
Pain? I know pain. And honestly, I don't care for it much. Kill the feed, Sally.
Sally aimed and fired her Draco, destroying every camera in the room.
What have you done?
McNamara screamed, pulling at her hair.
You've ruined the game!
Jason raised the revolver.
On your knees,
he ordered. McNamara knelt. When she looked up, her eyes were furious, accusing.
And what's the name of the whore that replaced me? Ravena,
Jason said.
And she's worth 10 of you, dead or alive.
Worth 10 of me? Then why does your erotic robotic flaunt my puss?
Game over, Trish,
Jason said as he aimed.
Are you ready?
Ready and waiting for you in the hottest hell, Jace. A smirk crossed Sally's lips. With clenched teeth, McNamara balled up her fists and rocked on her knees. Her wet eyes bore holes through Sally as she ranted, waiting for the end. Remember this, copycat. He made you in my image. It's my puss he sees when he ogles you. My eyes and my skin. All those cold, lonesome nights, when he rolls over, all riled up and hanging out for it. It's my lips you're shifting with, my body you're wearing. And afterward, when his lust is long spent and he grows weary, you'll find your ass right at bang. The gunshot blasted, and the final words of Patricia Rhiannon McNamara died stillborn in her throat. Jason stood over her sprawled body and watched blood trickle down her nose from the smoking hole in her forehead, her clover-green eyes glassy, frozen. Satisfied, he said to Sally,
"Let's go home."
"Home," Sally echoed, smiling. "Our home." Jason Korde was nearly to the collapsed wall, nearly out of the room, before he realized his bodyguard was not behind him. Turning around, he saw her still looming over McNamara's body. Jason noticed something different in her posture as he watched her, but he could not tell what it was, nor what it meant. After a moment, he called out,
"Sally, ready to go home?"
The android finally tore her eyes away from her dead, human reflection long enough to answer her owner. "Yes," she replied. "Ready to go home." But the smile on her face was gone.